So, this is the last mold I made in a toilet paper tube to make this part for my wheelchair. Kind of like that. Now, I don't need to do this, but I want to practice making a two-part mold. And I'm thinking of having this little tire gauge from US Gauge that was in my grandpa's stuff from back in the 20s and 30s. Anyway, I'm going to have it like refurbished and I might have to ship it. So I'm going to make a two-part mold of this guy. And it's going to start with clay. So this particular brand of plasticina is, make sure I get the name right. This is Sargent, like a sergeant. It's an art supply. Plasticina is a very fine clay. It never gets hard. It doesn't dry out. It's based on minerals, and more importantly, this particular version of plasticina is, as far as I can tell, unless they tell you different, plasticina is usually sulfur free. But I've learned in my long life to trust and verify, so you got to get them to tell you. And in the case of Sargent, everything I've looked at tells me that it is sulfur free, and that's important if you're going to use like a silicone based two-part molding rubber, because that's what, if there's sulfur in it, it'll mess with the curing process of the silicone rubber. Thing to remember with this stuff is that avoid the temptation of forming it out to fill a hole, because usually if you see a low spot, it's because there's a hole there. And you want to try and get this as flat as possible, using anything you got at hand. Okay, so I got about a 1/4 inch. So found if I get right about there, kind of at an angle, it fits on this little block of wood. Nice. So now I'm going to try and squish it in there a little bit. I'll make an impression. So I made the impression. See, I've got an area. See if you can see this. Can you see that? Man, I'm terrible at doing it backwards, ain't I? There it is. This impression that it made of the back of that gauge gives me an area that I can go in and carve some of that wax out, so I can sink this guy down in where it meets up with these two protrusions. So that's going to be a little bit of carving, and I'll be back at it. So I'm just going around with a little X-Acto knife. I'll be scraping some of this guy out of here. How you do this part, I think I gotta start by saying I know very little about this. And don't interpret me talking like I know about it as meaning I'm saying that I am by any means an expert. I've been studying this for 3 or 4 years with a goal in mind, And that goal has a step in the process that includes doing this, making a two-part mold. So I'm working with molten metal, and since I'm working with molten metal, I need to make multiple stages of molds. And what I'm actually trying to teach myself is lost wax casting. So a lot of people talk about the wonders of desert living out in the desert in Arizona. But in my case, in the part of Arizona I'm at, there was really very few opportunities to learn trades. And like, I don't know of anybody that was doing like manufacturing here where they would do stuff like that. So just trying to make a recess in a controlled fashion. You can also do this by rolling out really thin sheets and cutting them to fit, however it works, whatever. So I might try that next. So I got a dimple here. Wow, that's pretty good. So now I've got it mashed in where there's a chance of separating it. And so what I got to do now is go around this edge and make it perfect. So I cut a little piece, lay it in there, and work it out. And I got a feeling that it's a little bit lucky that I, in my past, actually supplemented my income by doing concrete. And so you learn about stuff, especially the part I was talking about. Avoid the temptation to just move stuff over to fill it like this, because you're going to make a void over here, see? So if you do move it like that, which is quite common in laying concrete or finishing at least, you got to remember to put something back where you stole it, like that. So I watched a bunch of videos of people working with molding silicones, and one ubiquitous aspect of it is this phase where you work all these edges and get it really crisp and tight where it's perfect. That's very important. So I am going to turn the camera off and tend to that task without having a half an hour of video, right? See you on the flip side. Okay, so here it is. This next stage. You can see it's kind of like embedded in the clay. So everything you do is going to be a little different, so I can't say it's halfway with any certainty. It's in there where it looks like it'll come apart easy. So next I got to build some sides for this in order to contain the foam that I pour into the silicone, not foam, I'm sorry, the two-part silicone casting mold, or mold casting compound. Yeah, that. I don't want to irritate somebody. So I've gone around with this punch. It's got a nice tapered tip, And I made a bunch of holes, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 holes. See? And what's going to happen is that the foam, I keep saying foam, the silicone is going to flow down in there and go down into those holes and make a pretty darn good copy of this cone-shaped end of this punch. So then when I do the other side, it'll make a hole that fits, and it'll key it together so it'll always go together perfectly. That's the plan, at least. Okay. So I've been letting this hot glue gun get going, and I've got this. This is ABS with texture and smooth. I'm going to put the smooth side in. I'm going to hot glue it. Basically, up to this guy. I don't want to friggin' stay there, huh? And you put it where one end is right on the corner. So you either know why already, or you're going to find out. So I get that one started. Put it right against this guy, right? Then you go and start doing the rest of them. That guy up like that. Oh, wait a minute. I just did that wrong. Fortunately, it's easy enough to do it by taking it off. You got to have these guys, the tail hanging off the right end. Right? Let's try that again. This way. Hold it on there for a second. Get it kind of, so the glue's kind of hooked up, dried. Next. Got to make sure don't hang out if you can. Okay, one more. Well, glued it down to my paper. One to go. Hope you can still see this. Guess you can. So what I got now, it's kind of like a box, right? So I'm going to go around the edges. I started with it the hot. I got a 2 setting. I started with a really hot because it flows good. Then I got to kind of like, ouch, not put my finger in the hot glue. That's going to leave a mark. Should be all of it. Okay. And yep, I got myself a good little burn. You want to make sure every little crack is sealed up, or that shit will, or the silicone, the silicone will leak out. All right, turn this guy off. Yeah. So now you got to go around the inside and kind of tamp it down. Got to be careful not to mess with your edge around the piece. Thing is, you don't want the silicone running down either in between. Sometimes you might need to get a piece of clay and make a little noodle. Remember when you were a kid, made noodles? Put it down in there around the corner. Tap it in there. I'm gonna have to. Got some little, like, popsicle sticks, I guess you call them, mixing sticks. Get down into the thin areas. It's really important. I'm going to turn the camera off again, but just remind you, it's really important not to let that stuff seep around into cracks, get into places, because it gets it harder to get apart, you know. Anywho, see you on the flip side. Okay, so this is the stuff that I use. This particular version of it is called Mould Star 16 Fast. It's a 2-part, and they're mixed by volume. So you can put the same amount in a cup of each, and it's easy to mix. It's really important that you thoroughly mix these guys every time you're going to use them, because the silicone rubber, it separates down in there. So basically got to scrape the bottom all the time around the edges. Bring it up and you can see it's got a lumpy consistency for a while. And you also don't want to get too much air into it. It makes air bubbles. But that's the way it is. Okay, that looks pretty good. There's a little bit of sediment there. I'll mix it some more. These things also have a shelf life, and this bottle has been opened and shut quite a few times now, because I tend to do pretty small castings, or molds, I mean. So you never mix them together until you're ready, because these things, this particular one, it solidifies pretty quick. You got to be careful. But since I'm about to use it, I want to make sure they're mixed up good. Clean stick. About as good as it's going to get this time around. All right. So this particular case, I'm going to make 4 ounces, 2 in here and 2 in there. Make sure I have plenty. Kind of rolling it around in there, see if some of those bubbles will come out. All right, 2 ounces. Take a nice long drop like this. It looks like lumps, but what those are is bubbles. When you drop it from a height, they tend to stretch out and okay, 2 ounces. It's probably more than I need, but I'm trying to use up this bottle before it goes bad on me. Two ounces in this one. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing and roll it around and see if some of the bubbles will come out. Once you mix it, it's going to cure real quick. So there's other combinations that you can use that have a much longer longer pot times, so you can like vacuum them or pressurize them. So anyway, I'm going to mix them both together. Get rid of that. Now it's got to be mixed for at least a minute, scraping it around and making sure that it's all uniformly mixed together. A little bit more, make sure I'm really done mixing it. Now I'm going to pull it from way high, not on my thing, but I want it to stretch the bubbles out. Let it envelop. Feels like it's starting to set up already. I'll leave this guy here so I know I can touch it. Try and see if I can get some of the bubbles to migrate upwards. Thinking about using my ultrasonic cleaner. I could lay them in there and turn it on empty and it would vibrate them, you know. See a lot of bubbles coming up. So, since I didn't have the option right now, I'm still working on a vacuum chamber. But you can see the bubbles coming up. Probably not in the camera, but all right. Enough's enough. Now I wait. Well, let's see. Spent about a half an hour, 40 minutes. Seems like it's there. So, with a hot glue, you can break it pretty easy. Especially with this plastic. It doesn't come off the wood so much easier, but it's possible once you get it out of there. Okay. So I turn it over, get my handy lettuce knife. There it is. Take these guys off. Okay. Let's see now. Let me zoom this in maybe. There it is. There's the first half. So stay tuned. So anyway, I gotta put this under that category. Anybody who's ever done any of this kind of thing, YouTubing, I guess, probably knows the time that they got it all set up, got camera perfectly pointed, and turned it on, they thought. And when it did a whole bunch of stuff and I went back and realized that it's never been recording. So I missed the last bit. But let me show you this guy. I'm gonna get up close. So remember, this is the part I made the first time. And the last thing you saw was probably the box I made with this laying down in it, right? Something like this. Well, this was the result of that. As you can see, it's got holes. It's got the holes right here. These are the tips I made with the end of the chisel, right, to the punch. And they key in only one way. So when you put this together, it gets perfect. And so in my case, this was a training exercise. I'm not going to cast anything with this. I probably will use it for putting this in when I ship it somewhere to have a really smart guy fix it for me. Because I'm not willing to take this apart and ruin it. I give it. Sometimes you got to take it to the person that knows what the heck they're doing, right? But you could take this and take a razor knife and cut like a little groove here where you can pour the stuff in, some way for it to vent out, you know, so it would fill the entire void and make a reproduction of the thing. So, but I'm not going to do that. As I said, I did this to teach myself how to do this. So, and it's, I guess it's a bit of advice I'd give to anybody that's trying to learn or is interested in learning. I'm one of those people. That's why I'm 64 years old and trying to teach me how to do stuff. Teach myself. Whenever you're going to do something complicated, you practice. And it's like anything. You want to get good at math? Practice. You want to get good at running? Practice. You want to get at learning? Practice. Everything. Get good at telling the truth? Practice. And so that's what it's all about. As I mentioned earlier, I live in a place where there's not too many people or groups in the area that I can find that do things. And I bet there's a lot of guys here that do exactly this or something like this. But and then again, maybe we're just old hermits, old desert hermits holed up in a shed in our backyard. Anyway, if you like this, make a comment. If you don't like it, tell me why, because I'm trying to learn. Thanks for watching.